Hi, I'm Lori Jones, President and CEO of Avasec Communications and host of StrategyCast. Join me and my guests, innovators, disruptors, and visionaries, as we explore bold and brave marketing strategies that help you transform, scale, and grow your brand. My guest today is Nicole Pavlica, and she's here to help us rethink what it means to lead in marketing today. With experience across Unilever, Sargento, and scaling startups, she shares how marketers can step beyond brand work to influence strategy, align cross-functional teams, and own business outcomes. It's a clear-eyed look at marketing's evolving role and what it really takes to lead. Let's get started.
A competitive edge starts with strategy, and strategy starts with knowing how to develop one. StrategyCast is a leading marketing podcast that serves up strategic insights, trends, and tips to help separate your business from the pack. Tune in weekly as host Lori Jones interviews bold marketing leaders who have priceless wisdom and are willing to share. Each episode explores cutting-edge approaches that have proven instrumental in transforming brands into industry trailblazers.
Welcome to StrategyCast. I'm absolutely thrilled to have Nicole Pavlica join the show today. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here, Lori.
Oh my gosh, I am so excited to dive in today. We've got this great meaty topic, everyone. We are going to really provide you insights on why today's marketers must step up as commercial leaders, not just brand builders, to drive meaningful impact across the entire business. And of course, Nicole is
Absolutely.
She has got such an incredible background, and you've done so much of this. Tell us a little bit about your journey.
Sure. Well, as many of your listeners know and feel, marketing as a function tends to have a plentiful and heavy schedule, and really not always the resources that are required in order to deliver against their agenda. And this was definitely the case for me when I started my career in marketing at Unilever. I was spending a lot of my time thinking and dreaming about work and analysis, and would get quite exhausted, frankly. And I started to get impatient with inefficiencies in the system, and really, for self-preservation purposes, wanted to start to improve and remove bottlenecks in the process. And that's really how and when I started looking to process and system optimization as a way to further extend resources and agenda. As I moved into larger CPG organizations to smaller startup environments where resources were especially strapped, this skill set became incredibly important in order to get the resources, both human and financial, that were needed to drive the agenda.
Well, I tell you, and you've worked on some very large brands, and you've said that marketing often gets stuck in the ivory tower. What does it really look like in practice?
Well, I have said that, and I'm embarrassed for the times that I was also in that ivory tower. And what I'm referring to is I've worked in organizations where it was either marketing led or marketing thought they should be leading everything about the organization. And there were times earlier in my career where I and my peers felt like, we would be successful if only sales would do this, and if only ops would do this, and really felt like the plan was a perfect plan if only everyone else would execute. And I'm super embarrassed to talk even about this time, but that was the truth. And that's how we felt. And I think over the course of the last 10 plus years, especially, the importance of brands still exists, but the power has shifted to conditions that are both internal in terms of an organization, but external to marketing as well as the business, to other forces that can really make or break brands.
I love that. When did this intersection of commercialization really hit you? Because, let's face facts. Without commercialization, there's not a product, there's not a brand, there's not sales, so on and so forth. I mean, it's really the crux that all of those departments sit on.
Yes, yes. Well, I mean, we're in an environment where costs are rising intensely and salaries are changing and the businesses are facing a lot of pressure to exist, quite frankly. And whether it's the cost of ingredients or media dollars that are increasing, marketers who are responsible for the P&L aren't seeing a lot of relief on the profitability. In fact, amidst those challenges are still tasked to grow profitability and drive sales while not being able to pass along those incremental costs in price to consumers. So it forces a conversation around what can be done internally to still meet the agenda, but in a more cost efficient and effective way so that costs can be reallocated from where they have historically been into key initiatives that will deliver against the KPIs.
I love everything that you've just said. And now I'm really interested in knowing, this incredible journey that you've been on. What was that epiphany that you had? And maybe which brand did you have it on when you said, yeah, I see the importance here of commercialization and I want to dive headfirst into it, or feet first? That would be a really, really bad metaphor.
I would say there's been multiple epiphanies along the way. As I said, it's really kind of started with my own sense of preservation at Unilever. But even while I was at Sargento, there were opportunities to improve the stage gate process or cost management processes, but also to streamline conversations cross-functionally that ultimately free up resources and channel resources to the key priorities. This need to become commercially minded became exponentially more important when I started working in the natural food industry around 8 years ago. I moved from Wisconsin to Colorado to work at Boulder Brands. And these were challenger brands with, quite frankly, challenging budgets to work within and rising costs, again, to reach these very niche consumers. And it required efficiency, very deep strategic planning, close alignment with sales in order to get the results that we needed to see in the marketplace to drive sales. That learning only continued when I progressed into Hope Foods, which was another startup environment with really big goals and lean budgets.
Yeah. So where do you feel the big differences between, the ivory tower and the scrappy brands that are out there regarding the sophistication and the need for marketing and commercialization to be working more hand in glove? Are you seeing in those smaller CPGs that those titles might end up starting to be won? Or is there still going to be that line in the sand? Or maybe product and marketing or product and commercialization?
I think there's a really great opportunity for marketers to embrace commercial optimization, whether it's an independent role within the organization or whether it manifests from marketing. Marketing does work cross-functionally within most businesses and will experience some roadblocks to completing their agenda if they haven't developed the relationship with the cross-functional teams and also haven't spent time understanding what the core barriers are for those cross-functional teams as well to delivering against the KPIs of the
right
business. So when marketing understands the challenges cross-functionally, they're able to identify ways that they can modify their own behavior or optimize the system. And often marketing does have a leadership role and tends to be more vocal within an organization and can be strong advocates for change. And when they lead that change and guide that change, they have an opportunity to break down silos within an organization, but also build trust within the organization that marketing can lead things in a way that's ultimately going to better everyone. All ships will rise.
Right. And it all ties back to that strategic plan, right? And everyone having their lane and the cross-functionality that you've talked about that they can, truly be in charge of and successful with. What is the risk of marketing working outside of the strategic plan in that situation?
The risk is, well, and this is true for really any cross-functional team, at any point that any cross-functional team, marketing included, is not working and not utilizing their energy and resources towards things that deliver against a strategic plan, it absorbs the time and energy, often cross-functionally, and then no one's able to deliver those strategic plans. So I think it's incredibly important for marketing to be a significant contributor, if not driving strategic planning processes and aligning all of the resources across an organization towards a single North Star that everyone is aligned against.
I love the linkage that you're talking about here. And a lot of times that alignment, even with a North Star, isn't really discussed in a lot of the strategy meetings because they're so focused on KPIs and numbers. How do you as a marketer or how do you as a commercialization expert make sure that that North Star is fully understood and embraced by everyone on the team?
I think it's really important to have a collaborative and integrated strategic planning process. It really starts at the beginning of the year with all cross-functional teams coming together and talking about the situation and conditions that are going to influence next year's plan delivery, and that everybody understands those and works together on what those barriers are and what resources are going to be required to remove those barriers and deliver the plan. And once that strategic plan is created and aligned to, it really streamlines how the rest of the year works. Now, are there going to be new opportunities that come forward? Are there going to be squirrel moments? Yes, there will be. But when you have a strategic plan that is documented and disseminated, and not just at the leadership level, but really across all levels of the organization, everyone can realign and has the opportunity then to ask the question, hey, is this item X more important than item Y in delivering the strategic plan? It's a great idea, but maybe it's something that needs to be parking lotted until next year. And so once everybody's informed and involved in the creation of that, it limits the amount of time spent on non-value added activities.
Are you seeing a lot of these KPIs changing right now, or how have they changed throughout your entire career?
I think that the business KPIs are generally the same as I have seen over the years. Revenue, profitability, as some of the top. I do see cultural and employee satisfaction metrics coming into more strategic plans, but the business KPIs tend to be very similar. The action items within the delivery of those KPIs, especially in CPG, continue to be distribution gains, velocity improvements, consumer penetration, but only to the degree that they bring money into the organization and ultimately grow profitability.
And money is a big topic right now, especially with these, the tariffs among us. And typically marketing is going to be one of the first budgets to get cut.
It is.
How do you fight for what you know, or how do you defend the marketing budgets? Or, well, number one, and then if you're not getting them, and this takes place in the strategic planning too, if you know you don't have the budget to meet the goal, then the goals have to be changed. And that doesn't happen too often either.
Yeah. So one of the things that I have found to be the most protective of the marketing budget is to have volume and or revenue, however your organization prioritizes the metric within the strategic plan, be linked to the marketing spend. This way, if marketing spend gets cut, you have to internally have the conversation about what the implications are to the delivery of the strategic plan. When marketing is only tied to metrics like impressions and engagements and benchmarks, it becomes much more vulnerable to reduction because not everyone within the organization understands exactly how those metrics translate into sales. So the number one thing is work with your demand planning team and your sales team in the strategic planning process to link volume to your spend, either volume at the customer level or at a national level.
And I think one thing that's really important as well, in order to tie all that back to the strategy, is really understanding where the team is coming from a P&L standpoint. And a lot of marketers may not, unless it's a public company, may not have the opportunity to look at P&Ls. And I think that they should be insisting that they do. But what advice, I mean, it's super impressive when a marketer, the person in the corner creating things that are, that help people sell more things to more people more often, but they're kind of stuck into that realm of, of creativity. When you can go to a board meeting or a team meeting and know that you can read a P&L and understand why some of the decisions that are being made, it's very impressive.
Absolutely. And I think one of my strongest recommendations, especially for junior marketers, is to understand the P&L, but not just the business P&L, or oftentimes marketers may only have visibility to their own product P&L, which reinforces kind of siloed thinking. And so I recommend that all marketers at all levels have visibility to the business P&L, their product segment P&L, customer P&Ls, and channel P&Ls if you can get them. This allows for a much more holistic view of what's happening across customers, channels, and products, because it's not just about the product. Also, I recommend having a meeting with someone in the finance team on a monthly or quarterly basis to review changes in the P&L. Earlier in my career, I would look at the P&L and I would see things related to marketing spend, or I would pay attention to things that were more things that I felt I could control, and didn't ask a lot of questions in these other areas. For example, freight. If I would see that freight was over budget versus the prior year, I would accept that as something that I couldn't control. And it wasn't until much later in my career, when I was overseeing commercialization optimization processes and really responsible for the P&L at a much deeper level, I realized you can dig into that. You can understand what's driving freight. Did we change shipments? Are we not shipping full trucks? What's happening with some of our key customers? In CPG food, if you're a West Coast manufacturer and you land Publix as a key customer, you're going to have a major change in your freight costs, especially if you don't have distribution in that area. So as a marketer, you should be looking at not only what are the sales that are coming from that increased distribution at Publix, but what is it costing you in terms of freight to be shipping incomplete trucks? And is there a better way? Then you can have a conversation with the supply team and the shipment team to say, how do we fix this? What terms do we need to change to improve profitability? That's the level of granularity that I encourage marketers to get to.
Well, and because, as you've just stated, you're able to ask better questions. You're able to understand why the margins are as tight as they might be, or different promotions that you might want to come up with that extends payment for payment terms for paying for shipping as well instead of free shipping. I mean, it really does tie back to what marketers can do to help not only top line and bottom line revenue, but what it might tie into from a messaging standpoint from, for the customers.
Sure. And I think too, another element here is to understand and dig into trade spending and talk with the sales partner and make the sales team aware, hey, at this customer level P&L, we're really seeing some unhealthy conditions. And let's say that it's a large strategic customer that's really important. Hey, what's happening? What's going on with trade? How do we remove inefficiency within trade to offset these incremental costs we might be experiencing there? And how do we become true partners in terms of overlaying the marketing activation with the trade activation with all of the other pieces that ultimately are needed to support the customer? Then you can do so in a much more strategic way that also links back to improving both revenue and profitability.
And really, what you're explaining here is collaboration, joint understanding. And I love it when I walk into an organization and I see sales and marketing really, really collaborating. And I think it's changed over time for the better.
Yes.
There's certainly sales organizations and marketing organizations, and I think the best led ones are truly sales and marketing led organizations. But you're really able to make sure that that collaboration is there, and you're able to plan well in advance. You're able to, work together and set sales up to succeed. And quite frankly, them allow you to succeed through the right customer intel so that you can deliver them messaging and tools that are really working for the customers. From a customer segmentation standpoint, how important rather is it for sales to be at the table with those discussions?
Absolutely. I think just kind of tying it back to what are some of the fundamentals that probably should be in place within any organization, and it links back to commercial optimization, is having a jointly built, jointly meaning between marketing, sales, and finance, jointly built customer and channel segmentation model. Marketers are very comfortable and familiar with consumer segmentation, but I think that it's really important for organizations to have also this customer and a channel level segmentation. And we can talk about what goes into that separately, but once that is created, it really similar to aligning the whole organization around the strategic plan as a North Star. The customer segmentation then also aligns all the cross-functional teams and sales and marketing to which customers and or channels are the most important for the delivery of the strategic plan. And that will drive the amount of marketing investment and trade investment and insights investment that goes to that key customer. And it helps eliminate a lot of unnecessary conversations.
I am going to ask you something that I'd love for you to explain to our listeners today. There's so many incredible insights. You've mentioned North Star a couple times, and we feel it's vital because really, all of the messaging and the tactics and the strategy really ladder back up to that North Star, and it provides you an impetus to really wash any idea against to make sure, is it on strategy or not. But a lot of our listeners may be confused with the North Star. Is it a tagline? It is a value prop. How do you define North Star?
The North Star can be, when I'm using that in this context, it's really representing in a simple way the strategic plan. What are the one or two things that an organization must accomplish in a given year to grow and be successful? And a North Star strategy helps guide everyone, and it also empowers everyone within the organization to make decisions that are supportive of one or two key initiatives. And it aligns everyone on the resources, both time and human resources and financial resources, and how those are dispersed, both internally and externally. And it eliminates waste from the system.
I love that. It's a great, great, great explanation. Thank you for that. I'm going to put you on the spot again. With all these incredible brands that you've worked with, amazing brands, what is one of the most exciting North Stars that you helped implement?
I think one of the most exciting in my career was when I was with Sargento. It's such an amazing company, and the brand that it is today, and especially in the snacking segment, is so radically different than it was 20 years ago. And in that environment, at the time that I started working at Sargento and was working with some really amazing colleagues in this space, we aspired to be the #1 snack brand. And coming from a 5th, 6th share position in some regions or some retailers, this seemed like a really unbelievable task. And It was through deep strategic planning, great alignment, cross-functionally, amazing partnership with sales and marketing, outstanding insights that could be shared with retailers on ways that they can grow their category, and amazing marketing plans in order to ensure both awareness and trial driving of those products. And it took several years, but everyone was aligned to a single initiative. They believed it was possible and worked seamlessly to bring it to life. And Sargento's presence in the snack cheese case today is evident, or just shows the impact that you can have by aligning an organization around one or two key priorities in the strategic plan and moving the resources towards those delivery points.
How often should a strategic plan change based on what you're learning back from the audience as things are getting implemented? So for instance, regionality is something very, very unique here. And regionality is big in beverage, a big, big, big. So how do you take a look at that and know when to pivot or when to regionalize a strategy specific for the South that isn't going to be the same as the North or the West or East Coasts?
Right. Earlier in my career, when I was exposed to, if it's not in the strategic plan, it doesn't get resourced or funded, and the strategic plan doesn't change. I really hated that. I really hated it. But when I progressed through later parts of my career and was working on other businesses that didn't have a strategic plan or didn't have resources aligned to one or two goals, it was super aggravating to have misalignment across an organization and having cross-functional teams working on their own agendas, which didn't necessarily ladder up to a single plan. And I have since found great embrace for strategic discipline and setting that plan and setting the overarching KPIs. And in answer to your question about what changes, yes, new information comes in, and it should cause an organization to look at the strategic plan and say, is our strategic plan still relevant? Is it still possible? Most of the time, the answer is going to be yes. It's the how that might need to shift. It's not going to be what the goals are or the KPIs are. It may not even be the key action items that have to be taken, but it's likely the miniature or steps below that level that may need tweaking or may need an extension of time or different resources, but ultimately the strategic plan doesn't change.
Yeah. So you bring up the how, and I think that's really interesting. And that is an example of where sales and marketing really, really need to be aligned, because the how might be, sell through. The how might be a new product that is not, selling quick enough. So is the marketing, impressions high enough? Is awareness high enough? I mean, there's so many different ways to look at that. And the importance of that alignment between sales and marketing is critical. Where do you see sales and marketing most typically misaligned?
I think that over the course of my career, where I have seen marketing and sales misaligned is around the customer priorities, part one. And part two is in the significance of innovation.
Right.
And in the first part, the best way to resolve that is to align on a customer segmentation model where you're identifying your large strategic customers, your customers that are in some sort of, they have high potential, high growth potential. And then, but you also clearly delineate the customers that either are not well developed in terms of sales, they're not well developed in terms of profitability, or they're not a great brand essence or consumer fit, right? But you may still have some distribution there. And so it's once you have that segmentation model, the segmentation model should actually then dot down to this is how that key customer is going to be supported. they're going to have the best trade, or they're going to have the most shopper marketing dollars, or we're going to overinvest for a period of time in X, Y, or Z. They're going to get our insights. Then on the flip side is if it's a customer that it's not really driving profitability, it's driving some volume, maybe they're not a great partner, maybe their marketing opportunities are not that great, maybe they're a little bit finicky when it comes to accepting innovation. Those customers may not and probably should not get the bulk of the energy. Right. So that would be one. And then the second side of this story is in the area of innovation. Oftentimes in my career, I have seen marketers and or businesses bring forward innovation that solves a gap within the organization, but isn't necessarily solving a gap for the retailer or the category. Right. And this is where you start to have a little bit more friction between sales and marketing, because marketing is focusing on, what's right for the brand. And the sales team is saying, there's no way I'm going to get that item in, no matter how great it is, because they already have 5 and we don't have a strong case for bumping out one of these 5. So this is where it's also really important in the innovation stage gate process, really early on, for sales and marketing to be having a category and retailer need conversation in addition to brand and consumer need.
I think a great example of everything that we've been talking about is Coca-Cola. And new Coke sales diminished. This is back in the 80s because of the reintroduction of Coca-Cola Classic, as well as the release of Cherry Coke at the same time. And there wasn't this, the insights. I'm sure they were just trying to really, push everything out to reinvigorate the brand, but they did it in such a way that it caused market confusion. The product wasn't admired from a taste standpoint by a lot of consumers, so there was backlash with that. And those situations, I think, can really make or break meeting the strategy, meeting the goals, having that misalignment that we're just talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's tough within most organizations to have multiple big launches at the same time. Yeah. You see this when there's a family of brands. There's a struggle for sales in particular on which of these items are they going to prioritize. Because if you're going into a customer with 11 items or 2 items that are in Coke's case, right, where it's going to take up a third of the category, probably not going to win across all of those key elements. And you're ultimately not going to have enough marketing and trade support to truly launch those items in a best-in-class way. And this is where sometimes, having some pacing and having the teams, both marketing and sales, focus on 1 or 2 things can be really the best option from a commercialization standpoint, because I like to refer to spending and investment a champagne versus peanut butter approach. And I'm completely stealing a phrase that from a prior boss when I was at Boulder Brands, but it was really, this idea of you really want to have a large enough investment, both trade and marketing, to really drive a strong and fast start to an innovation launch. It's the best thing that you can possibly do, and avoid having a little bit over here and a little bit over on this product and a little bit in this market. And it's better to go big in one key space so that you get the consumer awareness that you need in order to even drive the consumer to the store and to even try the product, let alone come back. And this is a critical element of commercial optimization, is making sure that you're spending enough in order to have a launch or a product or a rebrand, whatever it is, be successful. And if you can't, it will under-deliver, and it might be better to wait.
Yeah. And what we're talking about here is activation, right? And this is where all the planning truly does come to life. And I guess you've also illustrated why some of the, the activations really do under deliver. But what about when they look really great on paper? What is a great example of, of a brand that you've worked on where you've seen really all things aligned and it was done perfectly?
I think I link back to my time at Sargento. I can't say enough good things about that organization in terms of their strategic discipline and the caliber of thought that happens both from an innovation and new business development standpoint, but also all the insights, right? So I think it's critically important to make sure that your innovation and your marketing are based on insights that they're undeniable, right? They're undeniable from the consumer standpoint, the category standpoint. They're considerate of what the retailer's situation is going to need, so that that data and those insights really fuel the creative. They fuel the media spend, the targeting, and ultimately that you are able to, going in that this idea, whether it's a base business that you're trying to gain new distribution on, or whether it's innovation, is going to be successful, is largely linked to the quality and depth of your insights.
And the quality and depth of those insights is completely different based on the sophistication, a Sargento and a Unilever of a brand versus a young brand who can't either afford them or they don't have the business savvy to go after them and find them. What advice do you have for those brands that are struggling to find the insights they need to really be successful in market?
That's a great question. When I was at Hope, we had a pretty slim budget and really needed to kind of roll up our sleeves and get scrappy in terms of how we were garnering insights. So part of it is, using and leveraging secondary data. It's also, if you have good relationships with some of your brokers or your key customers, often they have access to insights and data that you may not have as a brand. You need to ask for it. Mm-hmm. I really believe that everyone that's supporting the business wants to be successful. And if they have access to something that you feel like you can use, you just need to ask for it. Or find out what sort of minimal fee there might be in order to garner that data. You can pay $5,000 to $8,000 and get really critically needed information from Nielsen or IRI for an ad hoc study, right? But you can combine that information with secondary research. The other trick that I have up my sleeve is to partner with other organizations in your market, right? And create an insights or research partnership where you're able to pass along things that you're considering to their employee group and vice versa. And it's a great way to at least get the basic level of insights that are needed in order to grow greater confidence in what you're trying to achieve.
We could talk, like each one of these things that we've talked about today could be their own show, by the way. And I want to I know. I want to make sure that we touch on demand planning really quickly because that is where the rubber meets the roll here as well. I mean, the last thing we want is to sell product that we can't deliver. Years and years and years ago, we were working with a ski boot brand and the sales and marketing team oversold product at SIA. And the following year, they could not deliver all the POs that were there and that had been placed. And it was a major issue. And we, from a PR standpoint, had an incredible play on it at the next year. We allowed pies to be thrown in the face of all the salespeople who took those POs. So we had a lot of fun with it.
Sounds fun.
Yeah, we fully worked on it throughout the year, but it's a big issue, especially if you are a smaller brand and you've got so much that you're working through already, all of which we've talked today in this channel of commercialization. What advice do you have to them about brand or demand planning correctly?
Sure. Again, I link back to the strategic plan. As that strategic plan is built, what follows is often the financial plan. And that financial plan should be based on jointly arrived at volumetrics that are created with sales and marketing, having alignment on what are the key assumptions? What do we think we're going to achieve? When are the customer sell-in windows and category renovation windows, et cetera? And how does that play with what our timing is? Everyone should be very much aligned to that, right? So that, again, we're starting with here is the best view at the beginning of the year. And then I think it's really incredibly important for both the sales and marketing team to be a part of ongoing S&OP discussions, to both monthly or quarterly, and definitely quarterly, to make sure that marketing and sales are aware of conditions that might disrupt supply and production, because there's nothing more frustrating for both sales and marketing to be successful in selling in an item and selling in a trade program and selling in that marketing overlay, and then having it flop because they weren't a part of the S&OP process and they didn't know that production was going to end up shorting customers.
Yeah.
Or they didn't, or maybe they knew that was a possibility, but they didn't know it actually happened. And if there wasn't a customer segmentation model, the wrong customers might have been cut or shorted, right? And this is where you can really make or break your business if you don't have alignment within S&OP processes, because customers have scorecards on how manufacturers are delivering product on time and in full. And if you are continually having problems because of misalignment between what sales and marketing is trying to do and what production is actually able to create, you will erode the trust and the relationship that you have with a key customer. And it can take years to get back in.
A lot of what you're talking about here as well is, commercialization, understanding P&L. The numbers are key, KPIs, making sure that you've got good insights. And these are all opposite of what many marketers are known for, which are soft skills. You have shared so many incredible insights today, really across the entire transom of how business operates, not just marketing, but you've really illustrated the importance of marketers' role at the table and understanding numbers and really, in creating that brand affinity through insights, customer intel, understanding how sales and marketing can be aligned, so on and so forth. In a world that celebrates brand affinity, how do you balance emotional connection with the need to drive profit?
I think they need to work seamlessly. I don't think that you need to compromise one for the other, but you do need to find ways of having the brand be meaningful to the consumer as well as the retailer in the category and what you're bringing to the market. It makes it a much easier sell. And when you optimize profitability or you remove costs from a system, then you can find the funding to drive the brand affinity and awareness that you're longing to create in the marketplace.
That's fabulous. And with that said, I've got one more question for you. Part of our Better At series, we launched this series at the beginning of the year to really help marketers sharpen their day-to-day skills. What's one thing that you've learned to be better at that's made a measurable difference in how you lead, work, and show up in your role?
That's a great question. And the answer is an easy one for me. It's called essentialism. Many years ago, I read a great book on essentialism. It's the disciplined pursuit of doing less, or disciplined pursuit of less. And it was so empowering. And it really made me stop and question the things that I was doing as a marketer. But it has a great linkage both to business management, marketing management, and quite frankly, your personal life, right? And the gist of it is to identify the key actions that are needed in order to have the greatest impact on a goal.
I love
and
it.
Focus on those things. And it works in business, but it also works in your personal life, especially when your KPI is joy. You need to prioritize the activities that are going to help you realize that.
Nicole Pavlica, you're amazing today.
Thank you. Thanks for this opportunity.
Oh my gosh. I tell you, it's been so much fun chatting today. What is the best way for our audience to get in contact with you?
One of the best ways is through LinkedIn. You can reach out to me there and learn more about what my experiences have been. But I really love coaching and mentoring people and helping people to be their best. So drop me a note there and I will promise you I will get back to you and do what I can to help you be successful.
Well, I tell you, you have been an incredible, like a masterclass in mentorship today. So thank you for that.
You're very welcome.
If you'd like to get in contact with me, you can email me, Lori@StrategyCast.com. Nicole, thank you so much for your appearance on StrategyCast.
Thanks. Have a great day.
That's a wrap. Thanks for joining us on today's show. We hope your strategic brains are spinning with new ideas and bold inspiration that will elevate your strategies and marketing know-how.